Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On Podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another exciting interview with a first on podcast discussion with Zach Hendrix. He's the director of Automotive at Invoca. Zach, welcome to the show.
Brian, thanks for having me.
You know, Zach, let's set the stage. I am super impressed with the technology accomplishments that Invoca has invested in and delivered over the last 10 years. But I know many dealers are going to say, hey, this is the first time I'm hearing about Invoca. It's like the best kept secret. I think some of the OEMs and largest dealer groups have been keeping you hidden because they don't want others to know about your tech at a very high level. For a dealer who doesn't know what Invoca does, how would you describe it?
That's a great question and a great intro there. Invoca at its core is a call tracking and call analytics application. We have created the premier AI-driven call tracking analytics solution for dealership groups and OEMs. The vast majority of our clients today use this at the most basic form for things like tracking and counting calls. On the more educated and advanced side, using Invoca's AI-powered solution to inform marketing campaigns and also inform sales and revenue teams of the outcomes and conversations that are actively happening in their dealerships, in their groups, or at the OEM today.
I mean, you used the magic word. I'm going to say it 100 times today. Outcome, outcome, outcome. I don't care how many people click the call. I want them to connect. I don't care that they dialed the sales number. Doesn't mean it was about sales. I want to know, did the call connect? Did they speak to a person? And then what was the conversation about? Did it result in a test drive appointment or a service appointment? And then tying it back to the revenue. Zach, breakthroughs happen when you feed advertising bidding engines with outcomes, not clicks. And 2 years ago, we released that Google paid search study that with over 1 million phone calls from paid ads in Google for sales campaigns, less than 15% of those calls were actually for sales. What's been broken that it's taken so long for dealers to stop counting click to call and start waking up to, hey, I can't optimize sales campaigns if I keep feeding it service outcomes?
Well, that problem that you're talking about is the specific problem that we solve for. So there's a big gap that exists between what consumers are doing online today and then when they decide to take other actions like visit our showrooms or in over 60% of the time, call us in a sales or service or other profit center inquiry. Typically, when someone calls our dealership, the tracking stops, meaning we've got all of these vanity metrics associated with what they did online. When they call, we immediately lose sight of what happens downstream or what we should do in advance in regards to advertising or communications. And so that is the exact gap that Invoca solves for, is bridging between phone calls and what consumers are actively doing online today.
You know, Zach, there's so many things to talk about. I think we have to break this interview in 2 parts, but let's see what we can do. I've been writing about a movement of the larger dealer groups focusing on their first-party data. And, I've been critical of the people in this space, which we call hybrid CDPs, that are saying, oh, we just need data for the CRM and DMS. We don't need the phone call logs. But yet, I look at the data, and the data tells me that all marketing campaigns, the primary outcome is a phone call. Customers primarily call. I know if I need to service my car, I'm not filling out any form or online scheduler, I'm calling. And this call data is so important. And what's beautiful is that for larger dealer groups that are turning to, I would say, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 CDPs like Telium, Treasure Data, Salesforce, mParticle, like the list goes on, you already have turnkey integration. So what would you say to the fishing upstream CDP marketing automation platforms that say, no, you don't need call data to create that 360 view of the customer. It's not deterministic.
Gosh, I hear that a lot. I think the industry at large right now is exploring using data from other parts of the journey, such as the digital events that happen, or even sometimes what our salespeople are suggesting happened in store. The challenge is that call data is such a massive part of what should be feeding these CDPs that we're often missing a huge piece of that pie. And so if we look at some of the things that automotive CDPs are deploying today in marketing automation, it's things like suppression from recent transactions, or maybe some smart bidding based on transactions. The reality is when you start layering in call data, you get an opportunity to repurpose budget in areas that might make the most sense for the consumer given their standpoint that they've just called. For example, today's Monday. If someone calls our dealership today and sets an appointment with us for the weekend, our marketing should change. Meaning,
Amen.
Should we potentially bid higher if they perform a competitive search between now and this weekend, or should we just suppress them from existing advertising? So transactional data alone is just such a small segment of it. It's great that we can suppress recent transactions from advertising, but those audience sizes are oftentimes so small that they might take a significant amount of time to run, or it doesn't move the needle as much as call data does.
Well, here's what I'm learning, is that world-class CDPs have no problem handling data. I heard some people say, oh, there's too much call data or it's not relevant. I'm like, hey, they can crunch billions of data records. That's not the issue. What I do want to know is, of each customer in the dealer's portfolio, what's their preferred communication channel? Are they a texter? Do they respond to emails, or do they prefer to call? And then when they open emails, what time of the day? And when they call, what time do they normally call? Because all the CDPs have next best action. They have next best communication channel. And if the phone call isn't in that data set, well, we're kind of lopsided, and, well, it just seems like a blunder, let alone, Zach, the fact that by having every inbound and outbound call connected to the CDP, we can now activate workflows when a high-value customer comes in, existing customer, right? They know it, they're in the CDP. They get transferred, they get put on hold, they hang up. I mean, high-value customer, they should be put in an immediate workflow to have the BDC call them back. That's something that you can do. You can do it with a CDP. You can do it with your own platform. I mean, there's huge opportunities to improve the customer experience. Why are so many dealers taking their time, casually managing their first-party data?
That's a great question. And you hit the nail on the head there, Brian. It's the challenge is accessibility to the data. It's not so much ability to have vast amounts of data. It's the ability to see the data and then activate it and deploy it on the channels that make the most sense, or the preferred communication types of the end consumer. I think that when it comes to phone calls in many industries, in addition to automotive, have become seemingly a escalation point in the customer journey, meaning either A, they couldn't find what they were looking for online, so they had to call. Maybe B, they weren't convinced by our marketing enough to just show up, so they called. Or C, maybe it's a point of escalation. They want to immediately confirm their vehicle's status and available. The vehicle that they're inquiring about is currently available, or their appointment is guaranteed. So all of those calls are typically misplaced or not even tracked altogether. So being able to deploy call data in your CDP is actively a game changer.
Talk to me about practical applications of AI. I've been seeing more applications where a call is recorded, it's transcribed, and then AI is being used to determine the tone or intent or friction, meaning a manager can't listen to every call. And of course, anybody who has, they want to kill themselves. But they really do want to know, hey, did my service advisor tick off one of the customers, or was there language that would indicate an unhappy transaction? Where is Invoca in this kind of emerging, kind of iterative AI that could perfect alerting modules to different aspects of the call journey or the call content?
Oh, good points. AI as a starting point, I think might take the crown for the most marketable buzzword of our industry.
Yes.
Might be fighting against CDP this year, but I think historically we've looked at AI as black and white, like do you have it or not? AI should be defined upon a spectrum of how AI is being used or deployed, or what types of AI is even in place today. So first and foremost, it starts with getting the right data. And you're right, manually reviewing a few randomly selected call recordings, that's not the answer. It's not scalable, nor does anyone like to do that, especially after they've eaten lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't give you an accurate evaluation of the individual rep's performance by random sampling. So what Invoca does is uses AI to automatically score 100% of calls and reports not only on how well that salesperson, advisor, or BDC rep handled them, but more specifically, how that rep what the outcome, what the intent, what the durations of those phone calls were. So we can then inform the CDP and other disparate platforms of the true outcomes and associated revenue of that phone call.
It is going to be a wild ride over these next 2 years. I'm working with a number of dealer groups, helping them pick the right CDP platforms, then integrating their different technology partners, then understanding what data is available, start having the CDPs use some machine learning to crunch the data, see if we can get some predictive models. At the end of the day, the phone is the most important communication point that consumers use. And I don't know about you, but I always find these IVRs and phone trees kind of a rat's nest. I mean, every time I try to call the credit card, I think the credit card companies have the worst phone tree experience in the world, especially asking, for credit card numbers when, you're in a place where you can't, pull out your card or have a free hand. What are we doing at the level of Invoca to recognize an inbound call from high-value customer, doing routing based on LTV or, VIP status? Is there anything we could be doing to prioritize the calls from existing customers versus new customers? Tell me, where are we in, since you're connected with the CDP, about creating different call routing experiences?
Oh, that's a good point. Call routing is extremely important for a couple different reasons. Historically, we've routed calls to an IVR that might handle the call based on the consumer's position of them actively live on the phone. But I'll give you another example from another vertical that you might experience every single day. A person who goes through to cancel their cable service is a very different phone caller than a person who's trying to add HBO to their cable service. And so not only should calls be routed based on the activity that a consumer is doing online or actively trying to achieve, but calls should be routed based on what you just mentioned, LTV or other parameters. So given our connectivity to the CDPs or other ad tech platforms or other platforms in general, we can route calls based on consumer parameters, demographics, location. Most of the use cases revolve around the web page that the customer is currently finding that phone number on. For example, if a consumer is on your dealership website and is attempting to schedule service, but does not want to create a whole new login to Xtime or alternative service scheduling application, typically they would just call the number at the top of the page. Generally, that number is the sales line, which A, gets routed to sales and B, gets attributed to sales. The reality is if we can just do a better job at dynamically routing calls to the appropriate member at the individual dealerships, A, calls get answered faster, the consumer has a better experience, which equates to better revenue for the dealerships and a better consumer experience on the other line.
That also goes to individual ads, right? More and more dealers are doing consumer direct buy centers for used cars, right? They're actively asking consumers to get a trade value for their car, sell it to the dealer, right? If the ad campaign is that, you could provide the number and the routing so when the call's picked up, they can get a whisper, or I don't know if it's an ID on their phone saying, hey, this is somebody who's calling in from the trade offer, and actually be able to start the call with a little bit more pizzazz or, well, matching the expectation of the consumer. Is that a real life use case?
It definitely is, and it's actively being deployed today. Many of the CRM applications today have the ability to showcase screen pops. So the example would be, caller comes in from a paid ad. We know that the caller has purchased 3 vehicles from us historically and has serviced those 3 vehicles with us over the duration of their tenure. All of that pertinent customer information, along with what they're actively browsing today, can be passed to a sales associate, BDC rep, service advisor, so that the sales agent or service advisor can have a educated conversation with the consumer exactly where we left off. And we see this a lot, specifically with digital retailing. For example, if a customer completes 7 out of 10 steps in a DR tool and ends up calling, that consumer is now forced to recite the entire process over again.
That's right.
So we want to help have that sales manager answer the call, and then have that sales manager or agent who's answering it informed with where the consumer is currently at on their DR tool online today.
I love this conversation because I've been, for years talking about outcomes, not clicks. It's not about conversion. What was the conversion for? And if I understand this correctly, if one thing we wanted to get really clear with dealers is that through all their marketing campaigns, those that are click-based or referral-based, when someone calls, you can know how many phone calls started, how many were connected, what department each call was really for, not based on the number, and if an appointment was made, plus what percentage of those paid media calls were unanswered. Wouldn't that give dealer a closed loop then in figuring out their cost per acquisition or cost per service appointment instead of this weird number of like cost per conversion and you don't even know if the call's connected?
You're spot on. So, the first step is tracking and actively understanding where those calls are actually coming from and attributing them correctly. After you get the data right, you can do some really fun and cool stuff like audience segmentation, suppression, inclusion, exclusion. Step 1 is definitely getting the data right first.
Zach, everyone has a desire. I'm sure your development team, your executive team, very proud of your product. But the gauntlet, the crucible, I would say, is working for large dealer groups and OEMs. If your product can meet the stringent demands and high watermark of the largest dealer groups who have the most negotiation power and, data requirements, and OEMs, which have 12 cooks in the kitchen, the product has to be quite remarkable. Could you share with our listeners maybe some of the larger dealer groups or OEMs that are currently clients of Invoca?
Yeah, of course. We work with large dealer groups and OEMs ranging from clients like AutoNation and Subaru to several others and collision centers, albeit as well. A lot of these businesses are multi-location businesses. We've started to see a lot of dealer groups expand their footprints to national businesses and retail used cars nationally as well. So having a multi-location application that can route calls based on the geography of consumers or geography of contact centers answering those calls is vastly important. In addition to that, you mentioned security, mostly around the consumer side of data privacy. Listen, I mean, security is not sexy. It's just supposed to work. But the reality is that security is a massive business that we heavily invest into. And so when it comes to things like security, we offer applications like redaction, where you mentioned social security numbers or credit card numbers earlier in the conversation. Redaction is a key point to remove very private, sensitive data from the lens of salespeople or others that seemingly need to be protected from that data. And so working at scale across these large organizations, we've learned a ton of stuff over the years. And we try to implement those things with our massive client list, as well as the smallest clients that we get to work with every single day.
You know, Zach, you bring up some great points about scale, consolidation. I'm working on a dealer group project, and they have a phone system, physical phone switch, a cloud-based system I've never heard of. And I'm talking to their tech support company, who is basically the liaison between this tech platform and the end customer. And I said, look, I need to be able to get a daily dump of the switch calls, into a secure FTP area or an API. And they're like, we don't have either. And I'm like, what? It's like, we can email you the daily reports as a CSV. So, well, if you can email me, I'm sure you can find a secure way to do it, because email isn't secure. No, we'd have to do something. And I'm like, here's another reason why dealers have to be very careful. If you're going to have a unified data platform, you need to be working with people who support industry standards like secure APIs or secure FTP, batch processing that would allow the data records to be consolidated on a timely basis, so you could do real-time business flows or personalized communication. Zach, you mentioned automatically out of the box, you're working currently with Salesforce, Telium, Treasure Data, mParticle, and others. What about in these new and growing trends of you have Full Path, formerly Auto Lead Star, you have Outsell, you have Orbi, you have just a number of companies that are coming in, marketing automation, building CDP. Is the roadmap for Invoca to be the most widely integrated platform? What does that look like in the next year?
Yeah, good question. I think integrations, much like AI, have become a marketable buzzword in our industry. In many other industries, integrations are just integrations. It's something you do to better service your end customer. And so in auto, we highlight and market integrations like it's this fantastic thing or accomplishment we've done. The reality is we're just building products and applications for our customer's customer. And so from an integrations standpoint, Invoca looks at the reality that we are just a spoke in the massive wheel of data collection or resolution that dealerships and OEMs are attempting to achieve. We recognize that the vast majority of our end clients enjoy operating out of their native platforms like Full Path or Outsell or other CDPs that are emerging in auto right now. So our goal in the next year and beyond is to allow our end clients to live and breathe inside of the applications that they know and love every single day, but also have access to platforms and dashboards for richer data or better applications or criteria and customization inside of the Invoca platform. So it is definitely our goal to expand into integrations and better relationships with the tier 3 CDPs and marketing automation tools that are so popular right now.
Well, that's music to my ears. This is an interview I rank very high on my list of best conversations, because what I'm hearing is aligned with what my heart is saying this industry needs to do. We need to be proactive to create better customer experience. We have to have the data easily accessible to make smarter business decisions, to customize customer experiences, and to create custom journeys. We need to be smarter with our marketing deployment. We have to be there at the right time, but not over the top. We need to be relevant and not look schlocky. And I love the fact that your platform is filling a gap that is wildly underserved in automotive retail. Zach, if somebody wanted to learn more about the Invoca platform, what's the best website or way to get in touch with the company?
The best way is to start your search on Invoca.com. In addition to that, we have recently released 3 different guides to introduce dealerships and OEMs to conversation intelligence, which I would call the evolution of call tracking. We've got a guide that reviews and suggests what you need to do to get set up, along with what the industry historically has indexed on, which is better phone lead handling practices. I think we spend a ton of time on phone lead handling, and there are many companies that have managed service offerings that can help dealerships with that. The reality is if we just get better at attributing these calls correctly, routing them correctly, the managed service components of it are a lot easier to manage. So several different guides available online and on our website, starting point, Invoca.com.
Great. Well, if you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, I want to encourage you to get down to the 2023 Digital Marketing Strategies Conference in Austin, Texas, May 21, 22, 23. Zach and his team will be down there, and we're going to be tackling this very, very important topic of first-party data management, data activation, marketing automation with solid signals from your website, from your phone platform, from your messaging platforms, all to create a better customer experience. And dealers who haven't purchased their tickets should use the code FOMO200, that's FOMO 200, to save $200 on your tickets. And don't miss the opening act on Sunday afternoon as we sit down with over 10 CDP platform players and do a roundtable, so you start to understand the different offerings on the market to help dealers do more with their first-party data. And of course, you'll have an ample time to talk to the Invoca team about the next generation of call tracking and conversational intelligence to create better customer experiences. And if this is the first time you're listening to one of my podcast interviews, you should know that there are dozens of great interviews, and this is part of a series leading up to the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference. So don't forget to do a search, whether it's on the Apple Podcast channel or Google Play. Just search for the Brian Pash Podcast. You can go to SoundCloud or brianpash.libsyn, that's libsyn.com, for the full library. Zach, if there was one thing you wanted to leave dealers with before we ended today's discussion, what would it be?
Good question. There's so many conflicting priorities in terms of what you can do to improve your business at a dealership level. When it comes to calls and call data, this is the easiest low-hanging fruit for you to do more without actually doing more work. So I'd investigate Invoca or other call tracking companies to understand how you can better deploy and attribute your marketing data using call data, or additionally explore using AI to score 100% of your calls to get the outcomes that you want.
Amen and amen. And I will add a footnote. Dealers need to be considering platforms that are plug and play ready to bring that call data, the call insights into the CDP to create the perfect customer journey and a well-timed marketing campaign. Thanks, Zach. Thanks, everyone, for listening. This has been a great conversation. Can't wait for this conversation to be shared. So share it with your colleagues who are in automotive retail. And I hope to see many of you down in Austin, Texas, May 21, 22, 23, and the extra bonus day for the GA4 hands-on workshop on May 24th. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time on another podcast interview.